Tirzepatide did not create the woman who lost the final 110 pounds. I had lost 100 pounds on my own, no medication, and I built a foundation to help me lose the weight. I did regain 24 of those 100 pounds lost, and I was going through a lot in my life, and I will touch on that further on in the video. When I reached 284 pounds, I had a question to ask myself. Am I willing to go on the medication? Is this something that I want to help me lose the rest of the weight? In total, Tirzepatide helped me to lose 134 pounds. That 24 pounds that I had regained, and then that remaining 110 pounds that I needed to lose. So that made my total 210 pounds lost. So I want to talk to you about what the medication did, what it changed for me, and what it didn't change for me in that foundation I had already built, because the medication definitely deserves credit, but so does the woman using it. All right, let me tell you what happened with that 24-pound regain. So my foundation was built. I was doing all of the things that I was doing previously, but life lifed. We had bought our first house, and it was amazing. It was a dream come true. But during that time of us buying our house, my husband's dad was ill, and so he was traveling back and forth. And then, very unfortunately, he passed away. And so we had this transition period where he was helping his sister going back and forth to another state to take care of things. And then not much after that, his stepmom also died. So it was a very tumultuous time in our lives and then in our children's lives. And I regained 24 pounds. I kept reminding myself, you haven't regained all of the weight. You're not 360 pounds. There is a reason. The reason was the foundation I had built, but I did need help. So I went to my doctor and I did have blood work done, and she discussed that it was my PCOS. I can talk about PCOS in a different video. It is polycystic ovarian syndrome. It has been renamed, but again, that can be another video. When we talked about my PCOS and it affecting my weight loss, she told me that my insulin resistance made it to where I could eat the cleanest, I could do all of the right things, and I still wouldn't lose weight the way another person would that was doing all the same things I was. And that's when she asked me to reconsider Tirzepatide, because caveat, I did get asked to go onto Tirzepatide way at the beginning of my weight loss journey, and I said no because it was still very new, and I also didn't want anyone thinking I was taking the easy way out or getting help. I wanted to prove that I could lose weight on my own, which I did very successfully. But then my body decided to throw me a curveball and say, hey, there's a very specific reason that you gained this much weight, and there's a very specific reason why it's harder for you to lose weight. So once I embraced that and I told my doctor, all right, I'll give it a month. Let's see what happens. I realized that Tirzepatide was going to change my life. And I do want to remind you that this is what happened for my body. I want you to talk to your doctor, come up with the right plan for you, and remember that everyone's results will be different. All right, let's talk about what I get asked about possibly the most. What happened? What changed for me when I started taking Tirzepatide? The biggest thing that changed for me was my reduction in inflammation. A symptom of PCOS is having inflammation. So I had so much I didn't even realize. Like in the first 2 weeks, you could see a total difference in my face. Even my clothes felt different. And I thought, oh, it's just from water weight. You do lose water weight, but you also lose inflammation if you have something like PCOS, especially insulin-resistant PCOS. Another major change was a reduction in food noise. So what I mean by food noise is I thought about food so much less than I ever had in my life, really ever had in my life. That was one of the biggest changes ever. I also noticed that I was satisfied when I was eating a lot sooner than ever before. I also was, I would say, like satisfied for longer. So let's say I ate something at lunch. Sometimes I would be ready for dinner and sometimes I wouldn't. And thankfully, from the foundation I built before, I realized that's not a problem. It's not something that I'm doing to starve myself. If my body's not ready to eat, then I don't eat. What about side effects? Yes, I did experience them, especially in those first few months. I had fatigue, headaches, constipation. A couple times I had an upset stomach, and I did have nausea, but nothing ever came of it. I just felt nauseous. And those generally lasted about 2 weeks after every dosage increase. And then about 6 months in, I would say I had them very few and far between. And then after I reached the dose that is keeping me in maintenance, I haven't had any side effects. Did tirzepatide make losing weight easier? Absolutely, but it did not replace the work I had already done, the foundation I had already built, and all those tools that I had. It made the condition that I was working in easier. It made it to where the food noise was no longer something that I had to contend with, and it made my tools even more effective. So I made a list to quickly go over of those tools that I relied on the most. One of my most favorite is asking myself, am I actually hungry? If I'm not actually hungry, what's going on? And then I address it from there. I was making sure to reach my water and my protein goals every single day. I made that a non-negotiable. I also made sure that I was journaling every single day. So I definitely want to make a video about journaling. And what I would do is at the start of my day, I would do a brain dump, and then I would pull out a few things that I was sometimes maybe stuck on or an emotion that I couldn't get past. And then I would also journal at the end of the day so that I could see how I approach different situations, what I would like to change. That's actually a very valuable tool. I made sure to stop eating with distractions. This can look like watching TV while I eat, talking to someone on the phone, reading a book. There's a lot of ways that you can eat with distraction and eat more than you expected to. I also love stopping when I'm satisfied. So I had to practice that. That did not come naturally, but I would stop eating as soon as I felt like I was satisfied or I had less interest in the food. Not total loss of interest. I just mean a little bit less interest in food. I would let myself stop. I wouldn't eat for about 5 minutes just to see where I'd land. If I was still hungry, my body would say, you're still hungry. And if I was finished, my body would say, okay, no more. And one of my other most favorite tools is asking myself, how do I want to feel when I go to bed tonight? And it just means before I eat something, I ask myself, how did you want to feel when you go to bed tonight? A lot of times the answer was I wanted to feel light, airy, and accomplished. And I asked myself, is this food going to get me to those emotions tonight when I go to bed? Super effective tool. So with the medication, with these tools, my results made my doctor say, we should be calling you a super responder. But she knew about all the work I had already done. She knew about that foundation. And she said that actually what was happening was I had created a situation where my body was ready to succeed, and the medication gave my body the room to do so. Tirzepatide did help me lose 134 pounds. Remember, I had that 24-pound regain, and then I still had that 110 pounds to lose. I kept a week-by-week log of my weight loss with this smart scale that I have and an app that would show me different measurements. And I am super excited because I want to share that entire log with you in a future video. As of today, I have maintained my 210-pound weight loss for an entire year. Because of that, I am ready to consider the loose skin surgery, and I'm going to start doing the research on that. I will never minimize tirzepatide's role in my weight loss journey and the impact it had on my overall health. That being said, I will never minimize my role in my weight loss journey and all of the work I did to get here. The medication absolutely deserves credit, and so do I.